Hello everyone, welcome back to another World of Warships video. This one will be going over the tier 10 carriers for the current ranked season, or well, any ranked season. What kind of carrier I would personally take to those seasons into ranked battles. Usually ranked battles is either 5v5, 6v6, 7v7. So smaller amount of players compared to the usual 12v12 environment that we're used to in randoms, which results in a much stronger carrier performance. Speaking of which, did they change the Haku camo? Why does it look different? Yeah, anyways. Yeah, we're gonna be going over the tier 10 carriers. I'm not really gonna include super carriers into this one because super carriers in ranked is just, in my opinion, a dumb thing for them to include in a 7v7 6v6 format. For super CVs, my only thing that I would say about them is pretty much just farm as much as possible before the other carrier can. So just playing as security United States Eagle, just kill things as fast as possible. If you don't, well, it's just unfortunate. And also the matches, queue times might be taking a little bit longer than usual, but mainly because, well, there's not a lot of super CVs in the queue, right? So you're going to just tier 10 for this one. First one, Haku, one of the OG carriers added to the video game. She is a carrier primarily focused around her torpedo bombers. Torpedo squadrons, very, very strong. 194 knots with this build, reaching almost, 199, I think, with the commander included. You have 6 strikes with 2 planes, each dropping 1 torp, so that's 2 torps per strike. Mainly for Haku, yeah, just focusing torpedo bombers on the larger ships like cruisers and battleships. Basically, just bringing them a very low HP for your teammates to finish off, or you can finish them off. A lot of your damage output with combination of your AP torpedo or AP dive bombers. A lot of unhealable damage that you are dishing out to the enemy ships. It makes them pretty much suffering the entire match if you're able to land these ordnance on them. And on top of that, you have very fast planes. You have pretty good reserve sizes. You have 20 bombs, 26 torpedo bombers, 16 rockets. So pretty solid carrier overall. You are very tanky at range. No one can really hurt you if you're able to make the shells bounce on your deck. Obviously, if you are broadside to anything, you will most likely get penned over, especially if you're on your starboard side, because your tower is here and you could just plunge into here. But overall, very solid carrier. A little bit harder to make work because her planes are pretty lower on the HP side, but they are quick and very strong at dishing out damage. Solid pick overall. The next one, Essex. Essex is the newest carrier to the newest line that we have received. She is like the Yorktown, focused primarily around supporting her teammates with smoke and also very strong fighters. Essex has very strong torpedo bombers, unlike the Yorktown in the previous video. Essex torpedo bombers, these are 5400 maximum alpha. Sorry, no, that's the wrong one. 6400, same as the Saipan and the Lexington torpedoes. Very, very strong. And these have increased torpedo speed, built-in torpedo speed of 43 knots. And you do drop quite a bit of these, but the issue with this carrier is, like the Yorktown, you only have one standard squadron. What this means is if you lose all of your torpedo bombers, you solely have to rely on your tactical squadrons, which aren't always up all the time. So the resource management game for the Essex is a bit more demanding, but the regeneration timers are pretty flexible. You can utilize your tactical squadrons and then use your torpedo bombers once you find an opening. And in the meantime, you can smoke screen your allies. You can even smoke screen yourself to get into a good position. You can fighter and deny aerial combat and such like that against the other carrier. So very annoying carrier to face if the Essex knows what they're doing. A lot of aerial denial and positional advantages, I would say, thanks to the smoke screen. So very strong carrier overall. and definitely going to be one of my picks. I did have one season in ranked where I only spammed support carriers, so Independence, Yorktown, and Essex, and I had very good stats, very good win rate with it. Yorktown was a little bit harder, but Essex is just dominating. So Essex is definitely the strongest of the line out of the three that were added, and yeah, I would say you would not really have much issues with this carrier. FDR, FDR is a steel carrier, and she has a lot of planes in the reserves, a lot of planes in her strike, but very, very slow planes and very, very tanky planes. You're looking at like 3.2k HP, 4000 HP, 3.7. These are insane amounts of HP into your squadrons, into your flights. And what FDR can do is she can, during the actual attack run, when you're aiming down the reticle, she can actually turn like 90 degrees, 180 degrees against the enemy target, and you can pretty much force a good angle out of the strike with ease. And this really throws off the enemy team because they don't know how they're supposed to really turn or angle against you, because you have the advantage of being able to have that maneuverability during the strike. Very strong carrier at doing that, and that's what she's known for. Her focus is primarily very slow strikes, but large alpha, and being able to perma spot ships regardless of their anti-air values. So if you're going against something like a Wisconsin with the FAA active, FDR can hover and perma spot them and keep dropping them over and over, ignoring a lot of the damage being dealt to the planes just because of how tanky they are and just because of how many planes there are in that flight. So very unique carrier concept. It kind of goes against what the rework was all about, but it is unique at that. Very strong carrier in the right hands, but the issue with the FDR is primarily facing against something like an Essex or a Hakuryu or anything else that's more strike focused, and basically losing out on the strikes per minute and the damage output mentality. If you face against a carrier who is very good at dealing damage and basically winning the game for their team because they're nuking your battleships, killing off the destroyers, they're going to be able to carry themselves out compared to how you are going to be able to be carrying yourself out. It's just a very slow-paced carrier, takes a lot of time and patience, but the burst alpha per strike is much higher than other carriers, in my opinion, and a very strong carrier if you know what you're doing. So that's one of the options as well. All right, Midway, the other original carrier added to the game during RTS. Midway kind of fell off over the years, and after every single patch that released, more ships being added, Midway's effectiveness and her spotlight has been slowly getting dimmer and dimmer, but still a very strong carrier because you have a lot of torpedo squadrons. Her torpedo squadrons are similar to how Saipan is, not really how Lexington is with the 3x3. The Midway has 3x4. So 4 strikes, 3, or is it the other way around? 4 strikes, 3 planes each, and each plane has 2 torpedoes. So you drop 6 torps in one go. And it's a lot of patience, a lot of getting used to with this aiming with the reticle, because it takes much longer than other carriers to aim the reticle down all the way. And the ordnance, the reticle sensitivity is very sensitive as well. So if you move a little bit, or move your camera or just wiggle just a little bit, it'll throw that reticle off very, like a very large amount. So kind of a difficult carrier to get used to, but she has HE rockets, she has HE bombs, very hard hitting torpedoes. She actually has more alpha on her torps compared to Essex. And the, I don't know why a lot of people say Midway has been falling off, but even though she is a very strong carrier, she can do, during her dive bomb strike, she can do like a whole like 360 turn and actually nail a destroyer who's like turning against them. Very strong at doing that. 6 bombs. You have the option of taking either HFARs or Tiny Tims. I personally take HFARs because of the ability to deal with destroyers, but it's just your choice. The Tiny Tim rockets basically present on like Saipan, and an optional squadron on the Lexington as well, you basically have higher alpha, much higher penetration, much more HP, but you give up the rocket count. So pretty much HVARs will be focusing more on smaller and more agile targets, and the Tiny Tim rockets will be focused more around larger and more clumsy ships. The fire chance is also much higher, I believe, too. Let me double check this. Let me see the difference between fire chance. 68mm pen, 34% fire chance versus HVAR's 8% fire chance and 33mm. So there is a trade-off there, but it's just, you just pick which one you like. But Midway is much better than Essex at dealing with destroyers, that is for sure. Now the Nakhimov. Nakhimov is the tier 10 of the Soviet line. She has an immense citadel. This is an open citadel of 125mm, very large. And the flight deck is only 50mm, so other carriers or battleship HE can pretty much smash this thing left and right. So if you catch this thing broadside, it's pretty much almost guaranteed to lose a whole bunch of health or just die. So what makes the Nakhimov unique is that she has a system just like the other Soviet carriers. If you watch the previous video, we talked about Chkalov, we talked about the Pobeda. They have a playstyle of one flight, one strike, releasing everything in one go, and then coming back to the carrier. So you fly with 7 planes, 6 planes, that kind of thing. You release everything all at once, and you come back to the carrier. What this primarily means is each strike, you do have more alpha compared to most other carriers of your tier, but the issue comes in when you need something to be spotted. Usually other carriers, they can strike, loop around, going for excuse me, going for another strike, and just repeat that process with however many planes are remaining in their fight squadron. The problem with the Soviet carriers is you release your squadron ordnance, and then you have to return to the carrier, or unless you drop fighters to perma-light the target a little bit longer. Nakhimov cannot do that. Soviet carriers cannot do that, and they lack the ability to perma-spot something that needs to be spotted without them having to go in for a strike. But if we ignore that aspect of the carrier, we ignore that downside for the carrier, she has very strong striking capabilities. I mean, insane. So with the Nakhimov and the tier 8 Soviet carriers, on liftoff, they have the assisted jet boosters. So it lets them fly much higher knots for a period of time, right on launch. And this means that the closer that you are to your target, your striking rotations would be much faster compared to other carriers. You'll be dealing much more damage because you're releasing everything all at once. So if you close the gap between you and your target, you'll be able to get better rotations than compared to other carriers. This is the strength of the Soviet carriers. It is a risky play. This is a very aggressive play style. But if you're able to make that work, you're able to just dish out so much damage on the enemy team, and it's just so strong and it's just insane. I do have a lot of videos on the Nakhimov when she first released. A lot of videos of me pushing up and getting making plays and winning the game because of me pushing up into the enemy team. If you want to check those out. Her rocket squadron, it consists of Tiny Tims, basically. Flies up into the air, long machine gun animation, high rocket penetration, but the alpha is immense. 4,000 alpha, and you have 4 rockets per plane. I think that's like 20-some planes. 20-some rockets or so. Torpedoes, you have the 5.2K alpha, higher torpedo speed, 41 knots, very long arming distance of 826 meters, but you drop, what, 6, I think? 7 torps? Very large alpha there. And then, because these torpedo bombers are very packed, very tight together in terms of drop dispersion, it is very difficult to basically dodge these, especially if you're caught bow into him. Pretty much these torpedo bombers mean you can just drop something like that's stern in or bow into you, and you can just release it, and you're bound to get maybe 1 or 2. And because you're hitting them on the nose or on the stern, you'll basically guarantee a flood. If you're lucky, if you're not lucky, then you could just go in for another strike with another ordnance. But generally speaking, you would be able to get a flood with this. And then your skip bombers, you drop 7. Very strong planes. These are pretty much rockets, and your skip bombers are pretty much like your most used squadrons early to mid game, and then torpedo bombers in the later game, because of just how slow they are compared to the other two squadrons. But yeah, Nakhimov, very strong carrier, and if you're able to basically not get nuked because of your very large citadel from other ships and other carriers, so like the AP focus carrier like the MVR, then you should be able to have a very good time in the Nakhimov. Max Immelmann, the coal ship, German carrier tier 10. She only has two squadrons, torpedo bombers and the HE skip bombers. She flies very fast, German carrier, so planes are very fast, and her niche is primarily focusing around their skip bombers. So these skip bombers, they have an 11K alpha, 68 millimeters of penetration, very high fire chance of 65% with this build, and you have four bombs that you drop, 4 planes, and you strike 3 times. So that's 12 bombs right there. And what you can do with the Immelmann is you're basically the type of playstyle where you strike something over and over and over again until the ship just dies. Immelmann is very good at releasing her ordnance, like her skip bombers, hitting the brakes, turning 180 degrees and going to the opposite direction, and then going back in, all on the same flight. She doesn't have to fly towards the ship and over the ship after her strike. She could just keep looping in circles, releasing her skip bombs at range, and she negates a lot of anti-air damage this way. Very strong carrier for this. You're basically like a very strong power farmer, while also having the German armor. So 50 millimeter flight deck. You have obviously the 21 millimeter hangar plating. This is normal, but you have the reinforced side plating. 150, 150, 145. You have a icebreaker of 60, 150 side bow, and then you have the 19 in front. This is common on both of the tier 10 carriers, German carriers, but Immelmann's playstyle is pretty much like that. You keep throwing a rock at a wall, it'll eventually break. That type of mentality on the Immelmann. Very strong at farming, very strong at forcing damage con with fires and lighting permafires. So if you like this kind of playstyle, then pick up the Immelmann, bring it out. I personally don't think Immelmann is very good for ranked, because ranked isn't really about farming. You want to focus more about alpha damage and burst damage, but if you can make it work, then so be it. All right, MVR, one of my favorites. MVR is focused around AP ordnance. Immelmann more focused around HE and torpedoes. MVR is primarily AP rockets and AP dive bombers. These dive bombers are very trolly because they have received a multiple nerfs, and the dispersion is very RNG. And most of the time, you'll be getting maybe 1 sit, maybe 2 if you're lucky. Very rarely would you get 3 now. These bombs are very hard hitting though, so take your chances if you want. She's basically like a lottery carrier. Her rockets are her main gimmick of this carrier line. The AP rockets, you fly very fast. You drop 3. Let me see here. You drop 4 rockets per plane, 3 planes in a attack, and you fly with 9 planes total. So you basically lower in altitude during the strike, and you really want to aim for that waterline citadel area of the enemy ships, enemy cruisers, enemy carriers, especially when you're facing something like a Nakhimov. You can use MVR and you can focus down the citadel and you just nuke this thing so easily. Also, fun fact, on the MVR, against carriers that have 50 millimeter deck, primarily the Nakhimov and the Malta, these 2 carriers, you can land a citadel because of just how high their citadel is. This is their citadel and how high it is. All right, so the bomb just has to pierce through the 50 millimeter deck, go straight into the citadel. It's very consistent, especially if you drop it at higher altitudes. That's something that you can do against Malta and Nakhimov, which are very popular carriers right now, especially in ranked. So definitely go for that. For torpedo bombers, nothing really too special. It's just torpedo bombers. Consistent striking, very fast speed on these torps, 55 knots. She also has a unique upgrade which you can focus more into your torpedo bombers if you want. Reduces the arming distance, improves the torpedo damage, and improves the torpedo bomber HP. So if you want to focus more around torpedo bombers, have more consistency that way, definitely unique upgrade is going to be a pickup. This line also has the improved secondary range and secondary dispersion on these two carriers. So you can slide into secondary if you want. I choose not to. I just take the slot 3 because there's nothing else to really take. MVR is a very strong carrier, especially if you know which squadron to launch at that given moment on a specific carrier, then you will have a very good time. And that's what really distinguishes a good MVR player from the average ones. Using the rockets just willy-nilly, just flying, just hoping that you'll find a target is not going to be the way to go. You have to always look at the minimap and try to figure out which squadron will be the best choice for that specific moment. And that's how you can really make MVR shine compared to other carriers, because you have the answer to every single situation at that moment. So, Audacious. Not much to really say about Audacious. You're not really like an Implacable where every other tier 8 carrier has a not as strong of a flight deck. Here, these bombs pen 41 millimeters. At tier 10, you're not really going to be penning much at this tier. So the bombs, you can't really CV snipe to begin with. Next, the rockets. The Audacious rockets are very nice for dealing with destroyers, but the issue with that is tier 10 destroyers generally have a lot of them have pretty good anti-air defense, especially the more popular ones, Ragnar, Marceau, Gdansk, Holland, Smolensk, those kind of destroyers, playmaking destroyers. You have to deal with them with rockets, and you're not going to have the answer all the time. And these torpedo bombers, I mean, it's standard 35 knots torpedoes. It's not like this carrier is not really the best, just like the Implacable, not really good at anything anymore. I mean, you can meme around with it, you can have fun with it, I guess, but it's not a carrier that you would really take to win. Maybe if you're in a division in randoms, sure, but in ranked, I don't see the point of bringing Audacious. Carpet bombers are the reticle is very large. The bombs fly extremely slowly for some reason, and these bombs actually fly slower than the Golden Lions bombs, I believe. And because the reticle is just so large, you're only going to be landing a few on a cruiser or on a battleship. So I wouldn't really recommend, I'll just say it right now, I don't recommend Audacious at all. There's no real point to play it unless you really enjoy this type of playstyle. It has good flood chance, good fire chance, but that's like it. It doesn't really have anything else after that. So we could just move on to the next one, because the next one, the other British carrier, is the one that we want to talk about. Malta. Malta is the other Cole CV, and Malta is a very strong carrier. It did receive a nerf, but it's still very, very strong. So the Malta's gimmick is she has the stock Audacious rockets on these. The reticle is everything is pretty much her stock form. Good at dealing with destroyers. 28 millimeters a pen, 10% fire chance, solid in between squadron to use. Torpedo bombers. She drops 4. This is very similar to how Immelmann is. She drops 4 torpedoes, 4 planes in that attack, and she has 12 planes in the squadron. These planes are very strong because what you can do with the Malta is you can start your attack run, and once the reticle aims down, you can turn, like how the FDR can, you can pretty much turn them and chase after whoever is trying to turn against you and evade you. These torpedoes hit for 6,500, more than the 6.4K alpha that the Essex has, more alpha than the Midway, and these are I think it's like 420 meters arming distance. I have this, so it kind of messes it up, but 400, somewhere around there, 420 arming distance. Very strong torpedo bombers. And then lastly, she has AP bombers. These carpet AP bombs are notorious for nuking light cruisers, like the Austin, the Colbert, right? The super light cruisers. you can what you can do during the strike is once you line up the drop, you can hit the brakes, slow down all the way, and then release your bombs. So that way the bombs pretty much fly straight down instead of at an angle, like when you're going full speed. And these bombs have the best pen for that moment when you slow down, and it can basically citadel a lot of light cruisers. Very strong, and even towards battleships or any other cruiser that you don't get citadels on, you could just farm them with penetrations, and it deals a lot of damage. These guys received a lot of nerfs. So one notorious thing about the Malta, though, we're gonna talk about this first. She does have an armor flight deck of 102, all right, but she has the raised citadel as well. So MVR will be focusing you down if they know what you're doing. So that's the first thing. But the other thing, though, is unlike the Audacious, if you look at Audacious, regeneration timer is at the bottom there. Prep time 74 seconds, and you have 16 rockets. 16 torpedo bombers, 89 seconds. 16 bombers, 83 seconds. If you look at the Malta, she has 20 rockets, 57 seconds. 20 torpedo bombers, 57 seconds. 25 bombers, 46 seconds. 46 seconds on her preparation time with that large of a squadron is insanely strong. So Malta is generally picked the most because you don't even have to aim these carpet bombers. You could just fly over the target, release. It's not like a dive bomber. It's not like a skip bomber. Carpet bombers, because their reticle is so big anyways, you just release them. These bombs fly fast or drop faster than HE bombs, so very easy to nail enemy ships. Malta is a very strong carrier for that reason. But yeah, so that's going over all of the currently available tier 10 carriers. I can't talk about one of them. Not yet, at least. Soon, TM. But yeah, that goes over all the current carriers. In my opinion, what would I recommend? I would say, well, me personally, I would pick MVR. I would also recommend the Nakhimov. I would recommend the Malta. And I would recommend the Essex as my top picks. I would bring to ranked or any pretty much random battles as well. Any type of game mode. Every carrier at tier 10 is strong, very strong. It's just how comfortable you are at playing them. But one carrier that I do not recommend is the Audacious, as what I stated before. There's no point playing the Audacious over any other carrier currently in this meta and how she currently with her current stats. It's just no point. So I would just recommend ignoring Audacious. You can pick anything else, but just pick the one that you're comfortable with. My recommendations though for these steel and coal carriers, I would probably, obviously for steel, FDR is the only steel carrier available right now. Shinano is also coming for steel as well at patch 13.11 with the Steel Will event. But FDR currently, she's the only carrier right now. So if you want to go for FDR, you can go for FDR. Or if you want to wait for the announcement for Shinano, see how she is, you can wait for that. Now regarding coal, Malta and Immelmann, both are very strong. Both have different type of playstyles. Immelmann focuses more on farming. HE skip bombers, HE farming abilities, long range strikes. Very strong at doing that. Malta is more about dealing damage that cannot be healed. A lot of penetration damage, AP bombs, torpedoes with higher alpha. Very strong at that. So Malta is more focused around winning the game over farming. You can farm very hard with the Malta, don't get me wrong, but I feel like her playstyle is more suited towards just win rate focus instead of farming, like how the Immelmann is. So, between those two coal carriers, you can pick which one you like to play, because they're both very strong. They're very, very strong. But yeah, that is it for me. I went over the tier 10 carriers, went briefly over the super carriers. There's no point going over the super carriers. That is my picks for what I would personally play. And yeah, so next one will probably be tier 6. I'll have to think about if I want to do tier 6 carriers, but we shall see. But yeah, that's it for me. I'll see you guys later in the next one. Peace.